That and a number of other things got me thinking of the diversity that has always been a part of Christianity, and yet our desire to try to make it, no, this is what Christianity or being a Christian is.
When life throws a challenge at you, one thing is certain. To find a resolution for every issue, every problem, for everybody, there's more than one way. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of More Than One Way. So glad to have you with us. Thom and I have been talking a little bit about a documentary that recently kind of got brought to our attention that Thom went to go see in person. I saw it online, called Bad Faith.
Yeah. They group of, well, actually like 4 groups put it, sponsored it at Central Cinema. I'd never been over there. It's pretty cool little place.
Yeah.
And there were probably about 50, 75 people or so. It's not a real big theater, but it was full.
Mm-hmm. And
it was really just trying to get at some of the current state of Christianity in the United States right now.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning like the focus was on what has become known as Christian nationalism. You know what that is? How would you describe that?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it's the tying of kind of faith and politics into one.
Yeah.
Kind of the idea that they, or maybe a phrase you might hear is that, America was founded as a Christian nation and kind of leading by those principles or trying to make those the priorities. Might be the way they would describe it.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. And the sense I got from the film was, they're extremely certain on what it means to be a Christian, and extremely certain on what they mean by Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's while they never really explicitly defined it, they knew what they were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't fit into their characteristics, and a lot of it would have to do with being a certain kind of American,
mm-hmm.
then you weren't Christian. And it just got me thinking, that and a number of other things got me thinking of the diversity that has always been a part of Christianity, and yet our desire to try to make it, no, this is what Christianity or being a Christian is.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of the film would be this group of people who are really trying to influence in a very tangible way how politics are run.
Mm-hmm.
But not just politics, education, entertainment,
yeah.
And that whole world. They really, really want to have Christian versions of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side of people who were a part of the film were people who were the exact opposite of what they were, of
mm-hmm.
this Christian nationalist group. And they were people who were more concerned with the poor in particular,
mm-hmm.
and saw their Christianity would be really focused on love, care, and empathy for all people, but in particular, the most vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had these 2 very, very different ways of understanding Christianity.
But they both used that same term.
But they both used the same term.
As far as identifying as Christian.
Who they were, and
yeah.
what their values are, and though they were very different values.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, it got me thinking, what does it mean to be Christian? What is Christian? What do we mean when we say Christianity or I'm a Christian? And it took me back to way back into church history in my seminary days.
Mm-hmm.
It's like fun times, right? Go back into church history. Everybody loves that,
Yeah.
And it just reminded me, well, it's always been this way. It might not be to the extreme of those 2 groups that were in the documentary, but what I mean is there's always been diversity about what it means to follow Christ, to be a part of a church community, and to try to live your life as a Christian.
So from the beginning,
from the very beginning, from the very beginning, and it took me once again, like I said, back into seminary. And when I was in seminary, we read a book that was written in the 1980s by a guy named Raymond Brown. And Raymond Brown is a Roman Catholic priest who was been honored by the Pope for his loyalty to the Catholic teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it's important to me for him is that he's not like a guy on the fringe. Right?
Okay.
He's a guy who really tries to live his faith as he understands it through the Catholic world,
Mm-hmm.
through the Catholic way of doing Christianity. And he has put a lot of his time, his effort, his expertise, his intelligence, everything into it.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote this book in the 80s called The Churches the Apostles Left Behind. And so he would say the diversity of communities and the diversity of what it means to be a Christian is right there in the Bible. What do you think about that? I want to get your first reaction to what that means, because is a good one, but unpack that
Well, and I think I know it's been easy for me to look back at that time and kind of see it as a fairly straight line.
Oh, yeah.
As far as it went from Jesus to the apostles and then to the church, and read some of the stories in the book of Acts or other places and kind of not necessarily sense the diversity that you're talking about when I've looked back at it.
Yeah.
You know, whether I've missed that on my own or why I didn't notice it, I don't know. But I think it's interesting to have somebody that has some biblical scholarship to say, no, it was always diverse. There was always different ways of following.
Yeah. I agree.
Because
with
that was a fairly new understanding for me.
Yeah, and when I went to seminary, same. So I was 24 and had a particular understanding of what being a Christian was,
Mm-hmm.
and grow up in the Episcopal Church, and church attendance was a big one for my world.
Sure.
That was part of what it meant, and functioning within a church community. And in a way, I kind of just assumed all church communities were similar.
Yeah.
But then when I went away and I started taking a look at it, and then being in the Alexandria, Washington D.C. area, got to see a wide variety of Episcopal churches, not just churches, so Episcopal churches, and realized, there's different ways that people express this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, when reading a book like that, and it was very challenging. And I think some of it is because I feel like it gets presented in churches as if it were what you said, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of linear Jesus, the apostles, the church. And that's nice. It's easy to follow.
Yeah.
It's a nice kind of clean way. It's just not the way it happened. Right? So once again, and it's right there in the Bible. So, anytime you read, especially any of the epistles,
Mm-hmm.
letters from Paul or John or Peter or any of those guys, you're going to get that they're all different types of communities. But that's true for the Gospels too.
Okay.
That the Gospels aren't somebody following Jesus around and writing down what he's doing, right? The Gospels are written decades after Jesus' death and resurrection. Death and experience of his resurrection,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they're written from a particular perspective of a particular community.
Okay.
And some of the things that he talks about in the book are, so there's communities like in some of the epistles that were really focused on church structure.
Okay.
Right. So that usually means they were written closer to the 2nd century, as the church was trying to, or these little communities were trying to kind of organize.
Okay. Yeah.
And so there was churches that became a thing. And in our day and age, you can see churches that are more focused on that. They're
Mm-hmm.
really focused on church structure. They're really focused on the institution.
Mm-hmm.
They're really focused on things like priests and deacons and bishops and things like that.
Right.
Okay. And then there's the whole other end, which would be some of John's community, the person who's writes under the name of John,
Mm-hmm.
and that community would be more about individuals within the community connecting to the Spirit,
Okay.
which would probably get closer to what has become like Pentecostal,
Okay.
right? You know,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have right there in the Bible that big of a gap, right? So they all are, what they can all agree on is that Jesus reveals the nature of God in, through, and as his life,
Mm-hmm.
and that somehow or another they connect with that. And for some, it's this structural way, and for others, it's this free-spirited way.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's things in between,
Sure.
right? You know, so like the body of Christ, and who's the body of Christ, and some are going to really going to get way more into how do we connect with the Spirit that people experienced in, through, and as Christ. And some people are going to get way more into, like Matthew's gospel and the epistle of James, going to get way more into things like how do we maintain our Jewish roots but continue to grow into, right?
Yeah.
So you see, it has always been diverse. And so for me, you know, that puts a lot on us. And what I mean by that now is, like, for now, it would be, it's probably the same then. It would be, well, what community speaks to you?
Right.
And how come? What do you find interesting? Where do your values take you? And how does that work in your life?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think it's helpful to. It helps put aside the idea that things have fallen apart since that time, a little bit for me.
Yeah.
Just with the idea that not even necessarily conflict, but that variety, if it's been there from the beginning and it still exists today, it's not necessarily that it's broken. It's just the way that different people connect with it in different ways.
Yeah. But can you see that in the Bible? I mean, does that make the Bible, what does that do for you with the Bible? To see it not as, like I said, like with the Gospels, somebody following Jesus around but as a community's response to how they're trying to follow Jesus.
I think for me, it brings it closer to myself and my own kind of journey versus it being a special story that I hold in some kind of special way. I mean, it lets me picture myself in the midst of that easier, I think, than feeling so far removed from it, with the idea that I'm sure I would have had one way that I related to it more than another and might have found myself in a group that did it in this way, you know, versus thinking that, I don't know, it's easy to feel like we're so far removed, not just time-wise, but even in our faith and our experience, that it's hard to relate to at times.
Yeah, well, and part of that hard to relate, I could see myself the same way. And part of that hard to relate is, once again, how they present Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
In what form each of them present who and what Jesus is. Now, there might be some that are a little closer than others.
Right.
But they're still all, some really different, like John's gospel. But then some that might be closer, but they're still just a little bit different. They're still, like Matthew's gospel, like I said, it's going to be way more focused on, like Matthew has Jesus say, I didn't come to destroy the law and the prophets, I came to fulfill them. Right? So that's a big part of their community life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? How is this a continuation
Speaks
of
to
Judaism?
Their legacy and their traditions.
Right. As we're, on the other hand, Paul says something like, cursed be the law. You know, I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
And then, or the best he can say is, well, the law can get you up to a point, and then you have to have some kind of internal shift so that you can move from the law into what he's going to call grace. Okay? So very different ways to try to get at and understand what it means to be Christian and what it means to follow Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so, I find it helpful too when I get a little
Because sometimes
disoriented.
when people talk about the Bible or we bring the Bible up, we talk about it like it's this one thing.
Yeah.
And I think in the idea of thinking, okay, there are 4 different gospel accounts that were included, with the idea that there was a feeling that all those different perspectives were important.
Yeah.
And there were others that weren't included that also had stories and different things, So even the Bible in itself, like you said, if it has that variety, why would we not expect the same thing in our expression, in our following?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that so if you have the Bible with that much diversity, then there's books and stories around that were around at the time that didn't make it into the Bible.
Right.
That are going to have a very different focus and picture of who and what Jesus is and how it is that people follow him. Which, once again, I think is such a huge thing. I think it's giant, because one of the things about a film like this film, Bad Faith, is that the one group that was associated with Christian nationalism was so certain.
Yeah.
They were so certain that they had the right answer. And because they had the right answer and everybody had to fit into that mold, they could justify anything. And I think if you look at Christianity throughout its histories, that's when it was been at its worst. Colonization, things like that. People from one country going into another country and using religion to say, you're a savage and we're going to show you the right way. Right? So, I think for me anyway, I could have left that movie really feeling just like discouraged.
Sure.
But what has been really helpful has been to go down the church history lane all the way back to the Bible and say, wow, this has always been the case to some degree.
Yeah.
And so I offer that up.
So if you were to meet someone and they were to tell you that they were a Christian, what do you do with that?
Yeah. I run.
Like,
I run the other way.
Yeah, maybe.
I run really fast. No,
but I mean, it's like, well, what kind?
Or
what type? Or
what's your brand?
What do you mean? And it feels weird to say that around that term a little bit.
Yeah. What feels weird about it for you?
I think because, it can come across as that you're questioning or that you're maybe poking at somebody's faith or something, when you may just be very curious with the idea that I know people that use that term and we don't agree on a lot of things. Yeah. And that's not bad. It's just we use it in different ways to mean different things.
Well, practically speaking, if somebody said they were a Christian, I probably wouldn't say anything, But if they wanted to talk more about it, then I'd love to hear about your Christianity. I'd love to hear about where that goes. To you. And as we've been talking about, it can go in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I suppose I have a hope for it, and my hope would be that we can respect where each of us is, and stay open to maybe, for me anyway, that the way I was a Christian 5 years ago isn't the same way I'm a Christian now.
Yeah.
That it'll continue to change as I change.
Yeah. Versus that certainty that you were talking about, and the energy behind that.
Yeah. Because once people, it seems to me that once again, looking in history and then looking at that film, once people lock into that, then you can justify just about any behavior you want. And the one thing that I would hope we could agree upon, regardless of the type of Christian we are, is that this is for the benefit of life, not for the destruction of life.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the More Than One Way podcast, brought to you by the Center for Spiritual Practice in Knoxville, Tennessee. We really appreciate your time and would love to hear your feedback. You can reach us by emailing hello@morethanonewaypod.com, or you can connect with us on social media using the handle @morethanonewaypod. If you found this episode helpful, we hope that you'll share it with your friends, with your family, with people you work with all the people who you know. Thank you and take care.